Let's talk about Pastor Mike Ringer's defense of Charlie Kirk, not Christ. Now, before we continue, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Many of you by now know of the political figure Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated a few days ago. Well, maybe at this point, over a week, maybe. And in his life, during his life, he was only 31. He was certainly a lightning rod for right Christianity, white conservatism, pretty much white everything. Now, what is interesting is how Christians have emerged and have lionized Kirk as some Christian martyr, as if he was the 13th apostle, spreading God's message and kingdom, which he wasn't. Charlie was a grifter. And as grifters, you find a niche and then you exploit it. In Charlie's case, white grievance. You know, those whites that were upset and even now upset. They were upset at the passage of the 1964-65 Voting Act. You had whites that were mad over that. There was a strategy called the Southern strategy that President Nixon exploited, that white grievance, that white anger at blacks being free. Well, whites are still mad. Some whites, right? They're still mad. And people like Charlie exploit that. Fox News exploited that white grievance, that those white people who are angry at being called racist. Now, they're not mad because they are racist, but they're mad because we're tired of hearing about it. And through different politicians, presidents, now there's an attempt to even change the history, change the narrative. This is where Charlie Kirk's gift was, because he would attempt to change history, but he also spoke very boldly to white grievance. And we're going to get into some of this. Now, enter Pastor Mike Ringer. And I know his videos, the couple of churches we have in common. I don't know him, I never saw him and all that, but there were a couple of churches we have in common. And so, like a lot of white evangelicals, they have come out of the closet in favor of their white Christianity, their white perspective. Charlie represents that for them. He spoke that white to their white grievance. What his words resonate. And now what you see in this video that we're going to unpack is he is a Christian martyr, a Christian who stood boldly for the faith of Jesus Christ. No, he didn't. Now, Charlie, certainly, I'm not disparaging his faith, but that's not what he was about. Did he speak of his faith? Yeah, because he spoke conservatism. And he spoke a white Christian conservatism. And that's important to understand, that he did not preach the gospel. His work wasn't to bring people to Christ, because the very people he demonized, how would you bring them to Christ? But what he did speak to is this white conservatism, this white Christian conservatism, where white Christians feel justified in their racism, in their bigotry. The very people that you should be reaching out for Christ. Because how are you going to demonize them while trying to win them to Christ? And just so we're clear, Charlie did more demonizing than he ever reached out to Christ. Because in order to share the gospel with people, you have to kind of do that. You're not just going to just come to them and say, you're a demon. You trans people. Y'all are demons. Y'all are sinners and right? Without, if you're going to say that, but yet, here's the gospel. That Jesus loved you. That God loved you enough. That God loved the world. That he gave his only begotten son. See, that love that God gave his only begotten son. Not for white folks, not for black folks, not for Hispanics, but God gave his son to the world. And what you see always lacking is that message. And what's latent, what's hidden is the white grievance. We hate that black people are getting attention. We hate that all of a sudden all of the blacks. Now, why does Charlie Kirk's message resonate so with people like Pastor Mike Warner? And again, since Charlie Kirk's death, all of white evangelicalism has come out of the closet in favor of the lionizing Charlie Kirk. So this is what they say. They've always told us that we should have believed them the first time. And what you're going to see in this video is Pastor Mike Winger sanitizing the heck out of Charlie Kirk. Now, I'm going to do his videos because I'm going to do it service. I'm not going to chop the video and give you video clips. I'm going to go through his entire video. So I'll probably do maybe 3 videos or maybe 4 because I want to address point by point what he is saying and how he is saying it. So let's get to it. All right, so here we go. Pastor Mike Winger, here is his title of the video. Why, now get this, why I deeply, all caps, respect Charlie Kirk. 247 views. Impressive, okay? He has a large following too. I mean, he has an impressive following on YouTube. So here we go.
I could simply say Charlie Kirk was killed for using free speech and for his words. He was murdered for his words, which is true. And that this is a horrible and evil thing, and it will degrade society, and it will lead to totalitarianism and oppression and all kinds of vile evils and losses of freedoms and all sorts of wickedness. This is historically a fact that this.
I think he's overplaying it. While true, but remember, this guy was a lone gunman, a deranged lone gunman.
Lead to that. That is all true. But I don't want to only say that. I'd like to say a lot more than that. So I'm going to share with you guys 7 things I've learned about Charlie Kirk, who I didn't know much about. I did not know that much about him before his horrible murder, his martyrdom, I will call it, and I'll explain why in this video. But yeah.
So right here, think about this now. What energized Mike Winger? He didn't even know Charlie Kirk. He just said it. Most people didn't know who Charlie Kirk was. I knew who he was because I follow politics. I follow both sides. I listen to all sides. So I knew who Charlie Kirk was. But most people didn't know. Most people had to Google it. So why now then? If you didn't know who he was, now get this. So you're gonna also, this is telling. If you didn't know who he was, and then you go and you Google, you do whatever research you did, what is it about Charlie Kirk that resonates with you? And it's not going to be the gospel. Why does this figure, and why are you defending it?
I think a lot more needs to be said than just that it's wrong to kill people for using speech. That's important. But I, as a Christian, as someone who wants to think biblically about everything, as someone who wants to let my Christian worldview impact my political engagement as well, I think I should say more.
So your biblical worldview is warped by your whiteness. Your biblical worldview is warped by your white conservative view. You're going to see this in a moment. Again, that's what I'm saying. And just so we know, like I say, we have some common churches, and I could go to all of the churches. I could tell you about all of the white evangelical churches that he won't get into. That the racism that's there. And when we talk about racism, the word racism is very much so now a generic term. Okay, so if I say racism, not the textbook racism, he's not that, but that this white Christian worldview, and this is what he's getting ready to defend. But it's not biblically based. When you talk about biblically based, religion, Christian religion, by the way, in Christianity is religion. Religion uses the Bible to form their narrative, to frame their narrative. Remember, the Pharisees were the most religious people in Jesus' day until Jesus came along and exposed them. They were adulterers, they were greedy, liars, murderers. But they looked the part, they spoke the part. Some of the Pharisees could cite the entire book of Deuteronomy, but they were religious hypocrites. And we, in our day, hide behind our Christian conservatism in our nice suburban churches, white suburban churches. And we say biblically based. So what did that mean? We'll get into that later as he breaks some of it down. And I'll expose that this is not biblically based. It's a religion. It's a religious base.
So,
or a religious worldview that they frame as Christian.
the first thing I learned about Charlie Kirk was that Charlie was an outspoken Christian. And I mean, I was blown away watching the actual footage of Charlie Kirk sharing the gospel with people during his rallies or events, you know, in his back and forth discussions and debates.
I would be interested, and I say this honestly, I would be interested in seeing the footage when you say that he's sharing the gospel. Now, he did do that. He talked about his faith all the time. He talked about his faith all the time. I'm making the difference in it. I would love to see when he said that he is genuinely sharing Christ's gospel with what? With the end result of a person coming to faith in Christ. I would like to see that footage. And I'll say this. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist at this point. I'm going to say I don't think he did it. See, Charlie Kirk, he wasn't a preacher of the gospel. That wasn't his thing. He was a grifter. He grifted. He exploited white grievance. And apparently, and this saddens me, apparently, this is one of the things that resonates with Pastor Mike here. And think about all of the white evangelical conservatives. Just go on YouTube. Your YouTubers they would call themselves conservatives. And all you have to do is just go on YouTube and you say Charlie Kirk, and then you look at all of the Christians that have Charlie Kirk's picture. They all think the same. Charlie Kirk spoke to the white grievance, the white pride, the white Christian conservative. That's what he spoke to. When he would go to colleges, he was If you think about anybody knows who Candace Owens is. Candace Owens, again, and they were, I think she worked for Turning Point USA, his organization. She was a grifter. She said, you know what? I can make money off of being anti-black. Right? Oh, I could make money off of being anti-black. And that's how Candace Owens gained her success. And she was the darling of all of the white conservative, Fox News, even Trump, until she spoke against Israel. But Charlie was a skilled debater. And when you are a skilled debater, if you know the weakness of your opponent. So when Charlie would go on college campuses, he knew that the liberal ideology was easy to defeat. But guess what? Charlie's ideology is easy to defeat. And just let me just say this. I was horrified by his assassination. I abhor the violence that he preached. I abhor the violence that people live by. When you look at the shooter was raised in guns. I would much rather have Charlie alive. I would much rather debate him, have him alive to debate. So, but one of the things that you see that he would go to these colleges and people weren't prepared for like his questions. See, and the same thing, if you go on Fox News, a lot of people are not prepared. You go on these shows and then the host is already prepared to corral you into certain thoughts, to filibuster. And if you're not prepared, you don't know how to answer certain questions. And that's what happens. He goes when he would debate people, he was skilled at that. But his debate method was easy to defeat. And it certainly wasn't biblical. And I'm going to show you too. I don't want to get ahead of myself, because I'm going to show you how one of his debates, how he would talk fast. He would just spit things at you real fast, and filibuster, talk over you. See, that's a debate method. Doesn't mean that what he is saying is right or true. Now, that's not to say he didn't hold to his conservative values, just like Mike here is talking about conservative values. But as we will see, they're twisted. So, for example, if you say, well, we're going to go after the left because of abortion, but you're not going to go after the Republicans, the conservative, for their support of abortion. The president supports abortion, and they say nothing about that. But I digress. Here we go.
In ways that were clearly not political. It wasn't a politigospel. You know what I mean? The politigospel is about appealing to a religious base. What he was concerned with was evangelism, which is a very different thing. This is the thing you don't see the politigospel guys do. They don't do.
Now, when you say politigospel, Charlie is 100% that. And I say again, I would be very interested to see when you look at his debates. And again, there's no shortage of footage of Charlie on college campus or Charlie in front of people defending. I didn't hear a lot of, well, Jesus died for you. For example, I'm going to give you an example. If I was to, and I'm a nobody, okay? Look, you guys, you can look probably at my views. Like um, I come, I'm not even in the same stratosphere as Pastor Mike here. So my point is that because of that, I wouldn't ever, I don't have that platform yet. But I have talked to atheists. I have debated atheists. And atheists, a lot of them think they're very smarter and intellectual until you question their logic. Yeah, but you have to kind of be prepared. As I said, a lot of people are not prepared when Charlie would go on. But when there were a lot of times that Charlie could not handle when people would ask him very pointed questions. I'm going to deal with some of them, but okay.
evangelism while they're out there, trying to effect political change. Instead, they speak very personally about their personal belief in Christ, their personal relationship with God, that kind of thing, but not in a way of trying to compel others to turn and put their faith in Jesus, to proclaim his death and resurrection in a way that is simple and factually true. And I loved this about watching these Charlie Kirk videos. He presented Jesus like he was the most important thing you needed to get in your life, period. You needed to know Jesus. You needed to know him as your Lord and your Savior. You needed to be a Christian. That this was more important than your politics, more important than anything else in your life. And that, man, I have tremendous respect for that. This was, to my discernment, this was real gospel love for Jesus, presenting Christianity out there in a very powerful way to exactly an audience that needs it, desperately needs it, the youth of our culture who are being indoctrinated in colleges. I'm just being honest here.
And again, I would challenge that to say he did mention Christ. He did mention his faith. I don't see where he preached the gospel with the intent of people coming to faith in Jesus. And I'll admit I may be wrong on that.
The second thing I learned about Charlie Kirk. So I heard, when I first started doing a little research on the guy, I heard that he was a complete racist. I heard that he wants to advocate for stoning gay people in modern American law. I heard that he thinks black people are incapable of holding positions like president. I heard that he was a fascist who spews hate everywhere he goes. One of the first things I learned while looking into Charlie Kirk is that none of those things were true. Now, you may be believing some of those things. I'd encourage you to go and watch the actual footage of these things in context, and you'll see that he simply is not doing that. Now, you may even disagree with some of his logic in those clips. You might say, I think you're wrong there, but it's a malicious lie to say that he wants to stone gays and things like this, that he thinks black people are incapable of holding jobs like president or pilots, or that if your pilot is black, then you're less safe because of the person being black. That is, of course, not what he said. These aren't his claims. And I am
stunned that he would make this defense. Either he's totally ignorant of it, or he's just in a poor attempt to sanitize when there is a plethora of videos. Let's watch one. Here we go. All right, here's just an example.
No, I mean, like, you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
Because of DEI, it begs the question: when you see a black pilot, you wonder. You say, "I hope they are qualified."
First, think about this. This is one of the stupidest positions you could ever have. Now, he's attacking DEI, critical, and CRT, or critical race theory. Now, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what he's attacking. But again, knows who he points out, because DEI to them is black people. Okay? It's not only black people, but DEI, by the way, it's white women, but I digress. But look at this statement right here. Let me just show you how stupid this statement is. How stupid to say that he just said it because of DEI if he sees a black pilot. But let's just go with that. Let's suppose that the airline said, we need to have DEI representation. We have no black pilots. Do you think that they're just going to ride through the hood and pick up some homeboys and just put them in the cockpit? See how stupid that is? My question, name any DEI pilots that's not qualified. Anyone, name a DEI. Now, he also says the same thing about surgeons. Again, he said the same thing about surgeons. Let's see if it just comes up in here.
I wouldn't think that if the CEO of United or these airlines would reject DEI and say excellence is the ultimate standard. Is if I'm...
Now, let's stop for a moment now. Again, so look at that statement. He says that, and he's ignoring, and I'm going to assume now because Pastor Mike is in defense of Charlie, that his views on race is like Charlie's. That they're just as stupid. That first and foremost, why do you think we had to have DEI, affirmative action? Charlie is later going to, I think in this clip here, that Charlie's going to say that he thought that the Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake. Do you think that, Mike, Pastor Mike? Because let me just say this. If that's true, if Charlie had gotten his wish, I couldn't come to your church. It would have been illegal for me to come to your church. And by the way, most churches during that time, without the law, didn't fellowship with black people. Go back to the surgeon again. If the medical field said, oh my God, hospitals, whatever, said, we need DEI surgeons. We have no black surgeons, no black doctors. Do they ride through the hood and pick up homeboys and give them a scalpel? See how stupid this is? But he is speaking to white grievance. White people, white Christians resonated with that. They go, yes, Charlie, preach that gospel. Preach that gospel. And then, Pastor Mike, you say that's a lie. Then explain those videos. See? So now, to me, what are you defending? What is it that you're defending?
Especially because you know how it is. We're all in our bubbles. You either get conservative media, you get liberal media, or you get like the neutralish kind of media that you've clicked on in the past. That's what you get more of. Those who click and get the liberal stuff, the reality is that there's just widespread mythology about Charlie Kirk online, about what his views were, about how hateful he was. And you actually look at the footage, you're like, yeah, you'd have to be pretty jaded to misinterpret him as doing those things. In all of the clips I've seen, the evidence I've seen, and I have looked for some. Okay, maybe there's something out there I don't know about, and I would address it and deal with it accordingly. But it seems like more of the same every time I see it. You might disagree with the guy, but he was not those things. And the second thing I learned about Charlie Kirk, other than his incredible Christian commitment and willingness to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and to make that his...
Let me stop. Again, I think Pastor Mike is being incredibly disingenuous. I just showed you the videos there. Those are his own words. And not only did he speak it, but he doubled down on it. So what is Pastor Mike defending again? What is he defending? And why is he sanitizing it? Why is he trying to sanitize that when if Kirk was alive, he would go, oh, no, brother, this is exactly what I believe. This is exactly what I believe. All right, I'm going to pick this up in part 2. And again, what is always surprising to me deeply is when white evangelicals show their true colors. And Pastor Mike is showing his true colors. All of them, okay, are showing their true colors. All of them. And again, a lot of them I would consider my dear friends, but they're showing their true colors. All right, guys, look, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. And I'll see you in part 2 of a defense for Charlie Kirk and not Christ. See you then.